Hey there, dividend growth stock investors. It's Colby, the DGI Crab. Hope everyone is having a very good 2025 so far. The year is new, and I'm going to be doing a bit of a look back or retrospective on 2024 to see what the dividend increases looked like for the individual single stocks that the channel focuses on. But today I thought it would be worth going over the dividend-themed ETFs. As you may or may not be aware, I have a bi-weekly series I do every other Tuesday called the Great ETF Race, where I am primarily emphasizing investing $5 a week into 8 different dividend-themed ETFs. So in this video, I'm going to go over those 8 and see what their dividend increases, if any, looked like for 2024. In case you're new to the channel, I believe that age and time horizon are the most important metric for any dividend growth stock investor. I only cover 60 high-quality individual single stocks, and primarily I'm focusing on these 8 ETFs. So, without going into anything else, we're just going to jump right into the content, and we're going to go from 8th place in terms of dividend increase all the way up to 1st place. And I bet more than one of you out there knows which one took first, but you're going to have to wait until the end to see. I'm not a professional financial advisor. The content of the channel should be viewed for entertainment purposes only. I'm not offering you direct financial advice, but I am here to give you some ideas and provide you with some of my own research to maybe help you along the way with your investing and hopefully motivate you to do so. Okay, everybody. So, in last place, 8th out of 8 was DHS, the monthly paying dividend-themed ETF that I really like quite a bit. This one was a bit of a disappointment. The DHS 2023 payout was $3.54.14 per share. In 2024, it actually fell down to $3.41.41, which is a decrease of 3.58%. So kind of a bummer. I did want to take a look at a couple of other similar monthly ETFs to see how they did, and they actually performed either similarly or worse. SPHD, which is a much more popular and discussed monthly paying ETF than DHS, was down 13.39% on that dividend payout. And then PEY, which I discovered thanks to a viewer this year, one that I definitely appreciate quite a bit, it was down 2.54% on the dividend. And that's kind of unfortunate because PEY had a 10-plus year streak, consecutive year streak of dividend increases, and that streak was interrupted this year. So tough going for the monthly payers, unfortunately. I do still really like DHS. This is not enough for me to kick it out of the Great ETF Race. It's performed pretty well, actually, from a share price perspective this year, but the decrease in the dividend payout is never something that we like to see. If it decreases again by this time next year, if I'm looking at 2025 as a decrease, then maybe it might be time for me to shop for something different. But for now, I'm going to stay the course with DHS. This is still, I believe, an under-discussed and underappreciated monthly pair. Moving on, VYM, the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF. This one's done excellent this year from a share price perspective. It's climbed all the way up into the $130 range. It's been very consistent as far as that goes. But with the higher yielding ETF, typically the people that are investing in those aren't as concerned about share price appreciation as they are the dividend payout. And VYM in 2023 paid out 347.8 cents per share. And then in 2024, that did increase up to 349.85, but that is a meager increase of just 0.59%. Not great. They do keep their dividend increase streak alive of 14 plus years, but certainly not the kind of increase that we were hoping for. This is one that usually you're probably looking for a 5 to 7% year over year increase, and this one just did not cut the mustard this year as far as that goes. Glad they kept the streak alive. It's still better than what DHS did by several percentage points, but Little bit of a letdown. All right, next up, SPYD, State Street High Dividend Yield ETF. I like this ETF for a few reasons. It has a very low expense ratio and a very simple, straightforward, and easy to understand strategy of just having the top 80 highest yielding stocks in the S&P 500. So we're talking about mid to large cap stocks, and it's not one that does a tremendous amount of growth, but it's a very steady player, again, with a very cheap expense ratio. A lot of exposure to high quality REITs, which is something that I like. It's just something very steady, sleep well at night for an older investor, primarily to park some of their money in. The 2023 payout was $1.8276, and the 2024 payout was $1.8637. This is an increase of 1.98%, which is more or less kind of in line with what it typically does. This isn't one that has massive dividend increases year over year, but it is a pretty steady Eddie player and generally is going to yield in the 4 to 5% range. And if we can get just okay increases like this that can at least keep pace with inflation, this one remains a boring but stable and safe place to park your money. Again, best suited for older investors that want to have a safe hedge in their portfolio while having plenty of exposure to high or large cap stocks primarily. Next up, VBR, the Vanguard Small Cap Value ETF. So small caps can be a bit inconsistent year over year, both from share price and from what they pay out in dividends. I like having exposure to small cap stocks because the 60 stocks that I focus on this channel are not small cap stocks. They're mid cap or higher. So I like to just not really worry about what individual stocks in the small cap market are doing, and that's why the VBR Small Cap Value ETF is my personal choice to get exposure to the little guys out there. The 2023 payout of $3.80 is or is what that paid out in 2023, excuse me. In 2024 paid out $392.01, which was an increase of 2.95%. An increase is better than nothing. And again, with the small cap market, this is a little bit more for me just about diversification and exposure to that part of the market than it is a major emphasis of my investing portfolio. I'm personally just fine with this particular increase. It'd always be nicer to get something a little better than just shy of 3%, but with the unpredictability of the small cap market, you take what you can get. Next up, DGRO. The 2023 payout on this one was $131.59. In 2024, it paid out $138.51, an increase of 5.26%. So certainly better than the previous ones. A bit of a letdown, though. DGRO is all about dividend growth. And while 5.26% is respectable, it's not what we would want to expect from one like this. DGRO, you're typically going to get a starting yield between 2 and 2.5%. And typically what we want to get out of this one are year-over-year dividend increases of 7 to 9%, which is more the norm than the aberration for this one. But this was definitely a lower year for dividend increases for the stocks that were contained in DGRO, which actually brings us next to VIG. This is the ETF that I'm putting the most emphasis on right now in the DGI Crab Channel portfolio. And in my primary brokerage, I believe that this is just about as good of a dividend appreciation fund as you can get. I think this is really good for people that are in their 30s into their early 40s who are not necessarily close to retirement yet, and they're wanting to build up a passive income stream that's going to grow year over year over year. That's what the theme of this one is all about, dividend appreciation. It's the title of the thing. Now, in 2023, it paid out $3.20.81. 2024, $337.91. That's an increase of 5.33%. So almost exactly what DGRO did. This was probably the most disappointing one on the list for me with VIG. I'm absolutely expecting a dividend increase year over year of at least 8%, if not closer to 10%. And Obviously, it's been a hard year for dividend increases, maybe just not being as large as they've been in some previous years. The share price appreciation on this one, as well as DGRO, has been very solid, but I definitely want to get more than a 5% increase out of something that almost always is going to be yielding less than 2% when it is purchased. It's not a great dividend combo factor, so hopefully VIG bounces back in 2025 with a larger increase. In second place, this was a very pleasant surprise, VYMI, the Vanguard International High Dividend ETF. You've probably heard me say it a few times if you're not new to the channel. This is the only holding that I have that is non-US based. I don't hold any of the, and there's a lot of great non-US stocks, the Canadian bank stocks, Nestle, Taiwan Semiconductors. There's a lot of good ones out there. I don't mess around with any of those international stocks. It's just more to keep track of than I care to, worrying about international markets. And VYMI's got about 1,500 holdings in it, and a good, strong starting yield, usually in the 4% range. So this is just where I go across the board. I put 5% of all new money into this one, and it has paid off this year. In 2023, it paid out 304.73. 2024, the payout was 328.59, a very solid increase of 7.83%. Very nice for something that, again, typically is going to yield 4% or better. Very nice dividend combo factor. VYMI really came through this year. Share price didn't do a whole lot. I don't typically expect the share price to do a whole lot, but if I can get a 4% starting yield and an increase of 7% or better, that's math I can get behind. And then finally, our big winner here, SCHD, the internet's favorite dividend-themed ETF. It paid out in 2023 88.6 cents per share. In 2024, it paid out 99.44 cents. Now, those numbers have been adjusted to factor in the stock split that it did, that 3-for-1 split it did earlier this year. And overall, that was an increase of 12.23%. Excellent work there out of SCHD. Typically, SCHD yields about 3.5%, give or take. Getting another double-digit dividend increase to pair with that higher starting yield absolutely makes SCHD the hands-down winner of this. So my final impressions on this, I'm still very much committed to investing in ETFs with at least 50% of my money. Even though the numbers were a bit disappointing this year from a dividend increase perspective, getting that automatic diversification with ETFs, and in the case of things like VYMI and VBR, exposure to some sectors that I don't mess around with otherwise, is still a strategy that I'm going to continue to do. High growth ETFs underperformed with dividend increases. Primarily, I'm thinking DGRO and VIG, but they did have solid share price appreciation. And for long-term holds like those, share price appreciation is still important, because remember, later in life, you can always start trimming positions like that and moving it over into things that yield higher immediately if you need to help sort of push you over the edge. If you're sitting there right now and you're in your 50s and you've got a portfolio with a lot of things like that in it, and it's yielding, let's say $25K a year, and you're saying, well, that's a nice amount of money to have, but it's certainly not enough to retire comfortably on. You can certainly increase that amount by shifting things over from things like VIG and DGRO into things like SCHD, or even some things like the covered call ETFs like JEPQ or SPYI, to really juice that income and maybe get yourself up into that $40,000, $45,000 range really quickly. VYM continues its 14-plus year dividend growth streak, just barely. VYMI, best international ETF for my money, hands down. And SCHD, the internet's favorite dividend ETF, is the favorite for good reason. It absolutely destroyed the competition, but the share price did not do much. I don't necessarily need it to with something like SCHD when it's increasing that dividend 12%, but it is something to keep in mind for long-term holders, and that's why I generally emphasize higher growing things and start moving into SCHD more as I start getting into my mid 40s is the target range. So that's how the ETFs performed, you guys. Send me your questions to dgicrab@yahoo.com, and I'll see you on the next one.